Sri Lanka is on boil. Political turmoil now deepens in the country. More than 100 protesters reportedly injured in violent clashes. They're currently taken to the National Colombo Hospital. Now, amidst the chaos, Sri Lankan Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe summons an emergency party meeting to discuss the crisis. Sri Lankan protesters have also barged into the president's office cum residence. Surprisingly, the protesters have been joined by Sri Lankan cricketer Sanath Jayasuriya. 16 SLPP MPs, including Dalasa Alapurima, request president to resign immediately. As the economic crisis worsens in Sri Lanka, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa flees his residence. Now, police used tear gas to disperse the crowds who tried to jump over the barricade at Rajapaksa's residence. Absolutely incredible scenes that we're witnessing in Colombo today. Those are visuals that you can see from inside President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's residence. Protesters have stormed into his residence. You can see some of those protesters who jumped into the pool inside the presidential palace as well. Complete chaotic scenes. Thousands and thousands of protesters have descended into Colombo today in order to register their growing fury and anger over the economic crisis that has gripped the country for months right now. They're demanding the resignation of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, and reports suggest that President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has fled his residence, probably even the country, but no official confirmation of the same right now. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, who was in fact appointed in the month of May, is also facing pressure and calls to resign. Those visuals you can see, those absolutely incredible pictures that are coming in from Colombo. Lakhs of protesters who have descended into Colombo today. People have been getting angry. You can see tear gas and water cannons that have been used against these protesters by the police in order to try and stop them. But clearly, that didn't stop them from storming into the presidential residence, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's residence in Colombo. Those pictures, those inside pictures that have been shot by the protesters on their mobile phones, as you can see, they run ransack completely inside the residence of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who is not in his residence and is reported to have fled his residence. His whereabouts currently are not known, but protesters are demanding that the president step down immediately. Remember that the Rajapaksa family, in fact, has dominated Sri Lanka's politics for over close to 2 decades. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and former Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, Mahinda Rajapaksa, in fact, dominated Sri Lanka's politics for a very, very long time. Mahinda Rajapaksa stepped down, and that's when Ranil Wickremesinghe was appointed the Prime Minister, sworn in the Prime Minister of the country. He too is now facing calls for his resignation. You can see those top view images from Colombo. The streets are filled, the streets are packed. They have all surrounded President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's bungalow there, the presidential palace in the city, in the capital city of Colombo. The anger of the people of Sri Lanka, the island nation, now spilling over onto the streets. Absolutely incredible images right now. We are, of course, hearing reports of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa having fled. Where he is at the moment is not known, but we also hear that Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe has called for an emergency meeting today because he wants some sort of decision to be taken, and all political parties of Sri Lanka, in fact, to be taken on board with the sort of chaos and crisis that Sri Lanka seems to have descended into. Those pictures on the left of your screens, you can see those images, in fact, from inside the presidential palace. Protesters having entered the various rooms of the palace, having jumped into the pool as well inside the palace over there. In fact, it was on Friday that the United Nations urged Sri Lankan authorities to show restraint in the policing of assemblies and ensure every necessary effort to prevent violence. In fact, over the past 5 months, this calls for the resignation of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa grew. He defied those intensifying calls for his departure. In fact, he forced his own family members to resign, including his brother Mahinda Rajapaksa, who was Prime Minister. My colleague Akshay Nath is now joining me on this story. Akshay, absolutely incredible pictures that we're seeing from Colombo over there. Protesters having stormed into President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's presidential palace over there. It seems the whole of Sri Lanka is currently out in the streets of Colombo right now. Absolutely incredible drone images that are coming in from Colombo right now, Akshay.
For me, what we are seeing in Sri Lanka right now is an anger which has been piled up for over a period of 7 months. The last 7 months, Sri Lanka has been facing one of its worst economic crises. The kind of price hike that they've seen on basic commodities, medicine, food, and non-availability of medicine, LPG, gas, fuel, all of this, and the number of people who have been suffering on a day-to-day basis is one of the reasons why we're seeing the kind of anger that is being displayed in the capital city of Colombo now.